Howdy, folks! Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. No diaper talk here. We have some news, a couple signings. We have a player coming over from Russia that I don't think we expected as soon as he is apparently doing, like it's sort of like Michkov. And we'll talk about the big questions facing the Central Division clubs today. But as always, we'll start with the pre-show. Well, maybe as always. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, so as we were joking before we came on, here's my pre-show. Yesterday, last show, summertime. Mm-hmm. I have to remember that. Last show.
And I have to apologize to everybody because the Major League trade deadline has always been July 31st. And then this year, they changed it to July 30th. Why? I don't friggin' know, because it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday, but
and as everybody knows, no more waiver. Right. Those are my favorite. Like, it was the deadline, but not quite the deadline.
We did the game, and Mike still made it, and that's still up on YouTube and our SoundCloud. So that's good. But here's the thing. So I talked about what David Stearns was going to do before he did it. And he did exactly what I said he was going to do. He was going to nibble around the edges. And here's an exact quote. And this is a quote you should never hear from a New York GM, no matter what the situation. Here is the quote. Our team, I supported our team, filled the gaps that we needed to be a nice, well-rounded group. Well, I got to tell you something. When you have other teams going after big stars and they didn't, that's not good. And his last quote was he felt like there wasn't any starting pitcher that was worth a top prospect. Now, I would say Flaherty is. You go look at his numbers, and he is. And I would say there were two others.
But he's an injury risk, though.
Okay, but there were two others.
I understand not Flaherty. I know we're going to go through the hat. You're going to go through the hat of names here. But I totally get Flaherty.
Crochet was the other one, and that demand.
Crochet wasn't going to go anywhere.
I mean, number one, Crochet didn't do the White Sox any favors by making specific, things that I want.
The other White Sox pitcher, he was certainly worthy. I'm forgetting his name. The other White Sox.
You mean Kopech, the reliever, the Dodgers?
As a reliever, yeah, as a relief pitcher, sure.
Randy says Kikuchi, and they paid a heavy price.
Oh my God, that trade was ridiculous.
That trade was ridiculous.
I don't know what's Brown doing with that trade.
Kikuchi's worth it to a degree, but my point is this: you can't. Again, he's been trying to play. Stearns has been trying to play both sides of the fence this whole season. Right. You can't do that in New York. You have to either go one way or the other. You can't be half in, half out. It doesn't work. And right now, like the Mets are losing 7-2 today. They're gonna pitch their new pitching, their new Oakland A's guy whose name I'm forgetting right this moment. Blackburn, thank you.
Captain Hook.
He's going to pitch on Friday, and the quote from Stearns about that was, well, you can't replace Senga. So we just did the best we could. It's like complete cop-outs on every level. Even Anthony, if Dombrowski were to say this with the Phillies, he would get killed. He would get killed.
For what?
If he gave these Stearns kind of quotes, even though they're in a much different position, the Mets are still technically in a playoff position. I don't believe it. Yeah, but I'm just saying.
The market sucked. I mean, let's face it. If you're trying to acquire this, they were, trying to extract every white blood cell you had, and
there were 6 sellers. There were 6 or 7 sellers, and it was a seller's market. And you mentioned Flaherty. I mean, Russ. Apparently, the Yankees were in on Flaherty, but they didn't want to give up Spencer Jones, one of their top 2 or 3 prospects, for a guy who's been injury prone, and he's having a good year.
But there is control over him. And so the Mets were supposed to get a pitcher with control, and they got Blackburn, who gives up almost a homer a game. And
in that park,
right. So Citi Field's a little bit smaller. And so again, Stearns isn't fooling anybody. He's trying to act like, don't worry, in the winter we're going to spend
all an in-between team. Like, I think I just get this, and this is just from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
I think once Pete goes, I feel like
which now he's going to walk for nothing.
He's going to walk, but I wonder if Stearns wants that because he wants to kind of put his own imprint on the team.
He does, but you know what? You don't do that as a GM. This is your most valuable player. Maybe
but
not
if he doesn't want him. Let's say if he doesn't want him and he wants to reshape the team differently.
Right. Why wouldn't you want assets for him?
Because they're trying.
Because everybody knows. Because people are probably getting a beat on the fact that he's going to be gone anyway.
Because they're operating under this kabuki theater that they're still contending for a playoff spot.
Right. Because the Astros asked about him, and when I asked an Astros reporter,
he sucks.
And when I asked an Astros reporter, no Alonso, and he goes, "No, I heard the price is too high." So it's like the Mets are keeping a high price on Alonso and not trading him, and they're not going to get anything, and they probably won't make the playoffs. So I don't see the positive there. Yes, Stearns wants to recreate this team in his own image, but Steve Cohen has really put himself out on a ledge here because, right now, Stearns' other thing was, he goes, look, all of our prospects are developing. The guys that are developing are the guys that were drafted 3-4 years ago that are starting to develop. They're not his guys. Luis Angel Acuna is hitting 260 with 6 homers in AAA, and Drew Gilbert's played 19 games. So he blamed it on injury, but Acuna, who's Robert Acuna Jr.'s brother, he's not hurt. He's just not very good at the moment. And these are the guys they got last year that they said would be impact players soon, and they're not. And he's not even acknowledging that.
Well, Anthony, I mean, the Yankees and the Phillies were sort of in the same – because they're contenders, they're legitimate World Series contenders, and we know that the Phillies made a move for some bullpen. The Yankees added
two bullpen moves and 1 position player move.
By the way, I thank Roger Matthews, who says Mike and I are typical New York fans. We could be fans for baseball, and we are typical New York fans, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
And the Yankees added Jazz Chisholm, and we've seen his effect in the 2 or 3 games.
Absolutely, in the first 3 games against the Phillies, and he's very familiar with Philly. It helps when you're also very familiar with the team you're playing against. But Cashman is still taking heat because he didn't add an arm, and the Dodgers went nuts, and the Astros, they
had a blown save last night, although they won.
And people in Philly are also mad. It's like because though they addressed the exact things they.
I think Philly addressed what they needed to do. I actually think
what they needed to do, but I think it's also shaded in. The Phillies are in a little bit of a tailspin right now, and everything sucks. Everything's going to fall through the floor because
especially when the Yankees are
Philly. Philadelphia does one of only 2 things: cocky or completely depressed and distraught.
Right.
There's no in between. It just goes like that. So I ignore it, and it's just at this point now it's just like it sucks. They're in a tailspin. Let it happen here in July and not in September going into October.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, July 31st, 2024.
Hi, it's Anthony Majoni, and this is not Baseball Buzzcast.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Russ Cohen, my man. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm Michael Acello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Anybody who listens to our baseball podcast, The Game, knows I'm trolling Nico Riesco.
Major leaguer. Shame on
former major leaguer. He's got that over me. Now, let's start with the news. The news that broke this morning, which was the contract extension. And I understand why these teams, are going out and signing players after 1 year and extending them because they think these players are good. They want to get them on a favorable AAV. And I think Caden Gooley is a good defenseman. So this is not a slag against Caden Gooley. Mm-hmm. But the Montreal Canadiens signed him to a 6-year deal. I think it was $5.5 million AAV. Now, he only had 22 points in his first full season. Like I said, I think he's a good defenseman. But my issue here is, and it's indicative of what the Montreal Canadiens have been doing over the last couple of years. They signed Cole Caulfield, gave him the long-term extension early in his career. Slavkovsky, they signed him. He started to play well in his second year. The first year was a disaster. They signed him to the 8-year deal. If you look at the Canadiens, Russ, The problem here is that's it. They can't get free agents to come there. So what they're doing is they're locking up their kids, which they should, and that's smart. But they're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to contend for a Stanley Cup if this is it. You have Ryan Barker, you have Demidov, you have all these guys, but you need veterans, and they can't get them. That's the problem.
No, and that's why they were trying to push the envelope with Demidov maybe coming over when there was zero shot of that happening. Look, I like Caden Gooley. I think he's a quality guy. I think he's a quality defenseman and physical defenseman, a good skater. He's not going to be a big point guy. He's, like 27 points, 20, 30 points. That's it. He's not a 50-point guy. But when I was talking about Ryan Lindgren and what his next contract's going to be, it's going to be a lot like Caden Gooley's. And we have to see, as far as the Rangers go, maybe they're going to sign that one after January. I don't know. But if they don't, then they're in trouble. I think Montreal did the right thing here, because you should lock up all the young guys that you feel like are part of your future core. My whole problem with Montreal is they have not identified their core to a point where they feel like they can move ahead and actually try and contend for something. And it's just been a lot of years, just more years than I thought it should take.
But the core is not Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield,
Slavkovsky.
They're going to tell you they have a core.
I know, but it's not really. Look how you struggled for that, though. And I
know Slavkovsky again. I agree, but it's like this is what Montreal is trying to. This is how Montreal is trying to do it. And let's face it, free agency has not exactly been fantastic. If Montreal is going to add anybody, it's just like any team is. They're going to have to add via trade. That's pretty much it at this point right now, because the free agency market has been less than stellar the last few years for them to kind of go all in. So actually, I think it's in some ways it's smart to not be chasing bad money, chasing money in this case.
Well, I think the problem here is they have bad money already on the books.
They do. That hurts them.
Yeah, they have the Josh Anderson contract, a guy who's in and out of the lineup. When he's healthy, he plays well, but he's never healthy. Brendan Gallagher is not the player that he was a few years ago. So that's I think $12 million in cap space to those two players.
Right.
So, but my issue is even the guys that they've brought in, I don't think are really core, like Alex Newhook or Kirby Dotch.
Previously, they were well-regarded players. They were taking flyers on them, and it hasn't clicked for them there. Now, that becomes more of a case of how the players are being deployed, how they're embracing being in Montreal. That's a whole nother thing when you're playing in other markets, and then you go to Montreal, and it's all on top of you. It's a whole different animal. So I would say in this circumstance, you already have bad money, so therefore you don't want to invest in a market which is asking you to overpay in the first place, especially with the cap going up. Teams are obviously starting to spend stupid again.
Right.
So this is the issue for me, for Montreal. They have to find. This is where Kent Hughes has to find good trades.
Right. Well, that's what I was getting. They haven't made enough hockey trades.
They haven't yet, but that's something that they kind of like. I thought Monahan was a solid pickup for them, but we knew he wasn't going to stay. Right. Everybody kind of knew that. But if let's say they would have re-signed him, that would have been it would have been solid, but not necessarily for what Columbus would I have signed him for. Columbus did no, probably not.
But they got a first round pick for the investment that they made on Monahan. So they got a first round pick to take him. Then they got another first round pick when they traded him to Winnipeg. So it turned out good for them. But
you still got to develop these guys and get them to the NHL level. That's the whole point.
Right.
But it's also, as we've talked about before, when Colorado went through their long period as well in the early 2000, in the early 2010s, took them 9 years to kind of, if their plan is to kind of develop with their own, going to take a little while. The only difference is that they're doing it in a market where it's difficult potentially to do it. Whereas, maybe in Colorado, there's a bit more patience.
Well, my
since 1993.
My question here is, and then we'll get off this particular subject, is we know how nuts the Montreal fan base is. They're passionate. They want to win. They haven't made the playoffs in 3 years. They had a first overall pick. He seems to be a good player who's going to progress.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some core pieces. I don't think if I'm knowing that fan base is like I do, they're about ready to explode. If they miss the playoffs, and I think they're going to miss I think they're going to be last place in the Atlantic after 4 seasons. If they finish in last place in the Atlantic, there are going to be fans going to the Bell Center saying, what the hell is the deal here? We need to start winning, and they don't have the players in place to win. So,
what's going to happen is the fans don't show up to the Bell Center.
Well, right. That's true.
I will say
that's the thing. And as long as fans are still showing up at the Bell Center, then the team is going to continue on the path that they're on right now. That they're not
I just
under that level of pressure because they know they have. And in some ways, that actually works to their. If they are going with a slower build, that works to their advantage because they know the fan base is going. At least, they're going to see some dips in attendance. I'm sure they are, but still, the passion. The passion for the Canadiens is still there. And I think
it's especially on a Saturday.
But that's the calculated risk.
I know
of trying to do this thing longer term.
But here's an example, right? They did a victory lap at the draft in Montreal when they got Kirby Dach.
Mm-hmm.
Dach got 38 points the first year, didn't play last year because he was hurt. So now that trade's kind of like, okay, where are we at with that trade? They should have done more trades like that to try and upgrade their roster. And they really just haven't done it.
Yeah, you haven't been able to find the partners to be able to do that, and that's the difficulty that they're faced with.
Every one of their deals that they've made. I mean, okay, Alex Newhook I think is a good player, but there was always a cap situation tied with some of these deals. Kirby Dach, Chicago wanted to alleviate the cap hit, I believe, and so did Colorado with Newhook. So. At a certain point, I think you need to go out in free agency and overpay. If people don't want to come to Montreal and you can't be competitive on a free agent, then you have to overpay. Then you're going to have to overpay because otherwise you're just going to be in an area of mediocrity for a number of years and you're not going to win. And I could care less. If it was up to me, the Montreal Canadiens would never win ever. That would be a distinct pleasure. But, I'm saying in terms of hockey, the world of hockey is better when the Montreal Canadiens are good. So
Mike, can I make a quick announcement?
Yeah.
So right now, this just dropped on EP Ringside. You have to be a subscriber, but you could do it for free. A video from David St. Louis on what to expect from Matvei Michkov in his rookie season. He does a full video breakdown of him. I suggest you try and watch that because it'll explain how he plays his game now, what's going to have to change, that kind of stuff. So, and he is going to be our Monday guest on Locked On Flyers. So should be really good. Check it out.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Just last thing on the Canadiens page, they also signed Arbor Xhekaj to a 2-year deal for $1.3 million. He's a tough defenseman. Sometimes a little bit out of control, but I think there's some talent there. And when you get a guy who is a undrafted free agent, you sign him and he makes the NHL, that's found money. So good for him. The Lindgren contract, Russ, 1 year, $4.5 million. But the thing that is curious from the Rangers' point of view is they're walking him to unrestricted free agency here.
Right. So unless they have that handshake agreement, they're in trouble because he's a number 2 defenseman in this league. And the pushback that I'm getting from Ranger fans, which I completely disagree with, but they have their right, is they think Keandre Miller will be that number 2 defenseman. He's not. Trust me, defensively, he's not. And it's going to take a long time for him to gain that kind of continuity.
And not in the window of time that they're trying to get in the winter cup.
And Fox and Lindgren have had this continuity since they were teenagers. So that's what we're talking about here. And so the Rangers are playing a dangerous game now. You could say all they had to spend, Russ, was 4.5. And my answer to you is they could have rejiggered the roster somehow. And if they had to get rid of a player and give him his contract that he needs to get for now and in the future. But they didn't do that. So that leads me to the one of two things. Either they're going to make this deal during the season or he's going to walk to free agency. And teams are going to jump at Ryan Lindgren. They're not going to care that he's had a few injuries because very few guys play he plays a Kevin Lowe kind of game, but he's not a Hall of Famer, obviously.
Right.
But he's tough and he's dependable and he makes plays when you need him to make them. And he is an S disturber too. So he's going to get paid. He's going to get similar to Gooley out there on the open market. That's not mine. I don't know who's that.
That's me. Sorry, guys. Apologies. It's my phone.
Okay. Now just checking Puckpedia here. The Rangers are still under the cap, so this deal kept them under the cap. So there is no crisis here that would necessitate Trouba being bought out because remember, there is a secondary window because if you go to arbitration or if you have a player that elects arbitration or the team elects arbitration, there's a secondary window. I believe it's like a week after, but Russ, I don't foresee them doing anything with Trouba.
Everybody, for the fans that are hoping that they're going to do this, like we've gone through this before, how many teams would want Jacob Trouba, especially like you said, Detroit would jump at him in a minute. They would take him instantly.
There are 3 teams in the Atlantic Division I think would jump at him, and that would be Detroit, Toronto, and Buffalo. Right. Right-handed defenseman, tough, a leader. He's not over the hill. No, nobody's going to pay him much.
Yeah, but again, how many? This is what you have to look at that you can't quantify on paper. How many players make a tough play against Jacob Trouba and are willing to put up with the elbow that he's going to give to your face or the crush that he's going to give to you in the corner? And how many guys avoid that play because Jacob Trouba is on the ice? That's the stat you're never going to get.
He's not Scott Stevens, Anthony, but he's pretty close.
You have to keep your head up on a swivel when you're out there with him because, again, he comes in like an unguided heat-seeking missile, basically.
Yeah. And I don't know how you feel about these one-day contract situations, like player signs a one-day contract, but I'm like, okay, whatever, who cares? But Eric Staal signed a one-day contract today to retire as a Carolina Hurricane. This was the team that drafted him. This was the team that he won a Stanley Cup with. Mm-hmm. He ends his career with 455 career goals and 1,063 points. In his prime, I think he was a pretty damn good player. Mm-hmm. He was
a certifiable one. He was a bellwether 1C, as in, maybe not amongst the absolute elite, but at a certain point of his career, he was absolutely in the upper echelon of top line centers in the National Hockey League. I don't think anybody would argue that. I thought he had a great run, obviously, with Carolina. Him and Rob Brindamore teamed together, obviously, to help Carolina win their Stanley Cup. So I look at Eric Staal, I don't know about Hall of Fame, although
that was the question I was going to ask.
Yeah, I really need to dive in to his overall numbers. Mm-hmm. And really my initial reaction is on the cusp.
Yeah, I think he falls a little short, Russ.
He might fall a little short because he had, I think there's injuries involved there for a little while. But everybody gets dinged up. I mean, listen, obviously, if you look at a lot of, some of the Hall of Famers that have gone in recent years that would have been like borderline and got in, if he's close enough, I feel like now we're getting to the point now that if someone's borderline, they're probably going to get in.
Well, unless your name is Alexander McGillney or Curtis.
Well, those are other circumstances, which we have no idea about.
I think
all we can do is infer.
So from what I can see, he's the top point guy from the 2003 draft. It looks like Bergeron's just ahead of him.
Yeah, so I would have to think if
he's not. Actually, Bergeron's 23 points behind.
Oh, okay. So they, and that was
Bergeron's a no doubt Hall of Famer, but
that's so if you look at that,
that's why I kind of measure him. Bergeron is in 1,294 games.
Here's the key: look at the height of his. You have to look at the height of Eric Stahl's career.
Yeah, would they have won a cup without him? No.
I mean, listen, him and Brindamore were just as good at that year was as good a pair of top line centers as you could have in the National Hockey.
But Eric Staal didn't win a billion Selkies. That's the only thing.
No. I get that. He's not Bergeron, but he's one of the few guys that came out with the hype that he did from the OHL and lived up to it. There's no question he lived up to it. Now, his
class
last
is incredible.
3-4 years,
It's incredible for him to be the leader in terms of points of that class. Is it was a great class. I mean, that to me in many ways.
455 is no slouch because he's not a goal scorer; he's an assist guy.
Right.
But 455 is a good amount.
It is a good amount. An assist total?
608.
Yeah.
He's over 1,000. I'm going to say, he's in.
I think he's getting there.
I think he's in. He's got a Stanley Cup. He's got a Stanley Cup ring. Yeah, I think so. I think Eric Stahl's a Hall of Fame. Because again, I didn't have the numbers right in front of me. Thank you for looking, Russ. And again, because it's been a while. I guess for all of us here, it's been a little while. And maybe because again, we're running however many years here.
Actually, Pavelski has Staal by 4 points.
Pavelski's the top scorer from that class. So Pavelski,
and he was a 7th round pick.
Yeah. That's even Pavelski's an even more remarkable tale.
Pavelski played,
but I'm looking at this overall. To me, there were quite a few years there. He was also a cover face for I think one of the NHL 2K games as well. Not that can't, but that to me is.
There's no curse on that one.
There's no curse on that one. Exactly. So all in all, if I'm putting a 1,000-point player, you're adding in the Stanley Cup ring, been in the final twice, right? Because he was on that team that made it to a few years earlier, right?
Yes. Here's the quiz.
That lost.
1,000 PIM guy from that draft.
1,000 penalty minute guy from that draft.
Yeah.
No,
Corey Perry.
Well, Buffalo had over 1,000. I'm looking up Perry.
Yeah.
Now. Let's see. Corey Perry.
He was scoring. We all forget how good Corey Perry
was close. Getzlaf is at 960.
Yeah, and Getzlaf he's probably right up there too. He's not going to make it. Yeah.
Corey Perry has 1,426 penalty minutes.
So he's the leader.
He's second, and Dion Phaneuf had 1,340.
I was going to say Dion. I knew was way up there for penalty.
Dion second, Buffalo third.
I've seen him argue too many times.
Dan Carcillo had 1,233.
Oh, Carcillo was in that. I forgot.
I mean, because Carcillo was always good for getting tagged for penalties. Some earned, some unearned off a reputation. Countless fights. Obviously,
that draft was amazing. In the sense that
that was three class was just like ridiculous. One of the best classes ever.
Yes, but we will always remember it for our good friend Russ from the New York Rangers first round pick.
Don't start. Don't start. That was bad. It was
the
huge specimen.
I'll just make a quick story on that.
Yes, huge specimen.
As a prospect guy, and at that point, I had crossed over as a prospect guy, so I didn't want to take it on face value that this was going to be a bad pick. So I sent somebody to Dartmouth to go cover Hugh Jessamine, watch him play, interview him, report back to me for Sportsology, right? He comes back. The guy comes back and he goes, he's 6'6", and they have him playing at the point on the power play. He goes nowhere near the net. And then I was just like, Jesus, he's never going to make it.
I do wonder, though, then if that's where they kind of screwed up, and if if Dartmouth had played him closer to the net.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I can't believe
I always look at it as a combination of both the player and also the team and the team, and saying, why play him there? And that may turn around and say, well, he doesn't like playing around there, and that's why we had to put him in the best spot we could.
He turned into a fighter. Remember, he played Nashville system or something. He turned into a fighter.
Yeah. He is of course, he's the player in that draft first round that had the least amount of games played. He only played 2 NHL games. There was only one other player in the first round of that draft that played less than 200 games.
European player.
One player, Sean Bell, who was the
Bell, Montreal.
No, St. Louis.
He did end up in Montreal system at some point. I remember that.
Only played 20 games.
Sean Bell.
But everybody. I'm sorry. Marc Antoine Pouliot played 192. So everybody.
That draft was crazy. I still have a slew of interviews from that draft. It's just I probably should replay those interviews because some of them
are they on real?
We've already done enough of a deep dive here on the 03 draft. We literally went down the wormhole here.
We did that, Mike. No, that's the one where I think that was the draft where also Bill Zito told me I mispronounced Petteri Nokalanen's name, so he you
were told by the now Stanley Cup winning general manager of the Florida Panthers.
Yes. All right. Let's start with the let's continue our little look through the NHL with the big questions of teams. We'll go to the Central Division today, and now, I mean, I don't think that there should be a lot of questions about.
Oh, sorry, it was the 04 draft with Nokalainen. My bad.
Okay, that's fine.
Russ,
we forgive you, Russ.
Thank you.
The Central Division. Let's start with the team that was last place in the Central Division, which is the Chicago Blackhawks. And my question here is, I think Connor Bedard is for real.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you always see sophomore slumps, and this team, even though they've added some
special.
Even though they've added some players on the margins, they added Tyler Bertuzzi, they've added some veterans as sort of a protective layer. Whether Bedard can, get through a full season, and whether he can repeat the success that he had last year. That's my big question. What about you, Russ?
My big question is, when are they going to teach Connor Bedard how to play defense? Because look, I'm guilty. I only got to see Bedard play maybe 3 games this year, maybe 4, 1 live in Philly and then a few on TV because, we're busy. We're doing other things. I'm in prospect stuff. But people in the know, people that I spoke to, basically said Chicago just let him go out there and freewheel it and didn't have any real defensive responsibilities. And so, to me, that's got to change because he can't play that way and have them be a contending team. So at some point, that's going to have to change, and I would think this year would be the year it has to change.
Yeah, I mean, Russ or Anthony, if Bedard follows what Matthews and Crosby have done over the years, which is they improve one aspect of their game each year. They work on face-offs, so they work on skating or whatever. Then by the time they're ready to be a contender, then he'll probably be more well-rounded. But what's your big question for the Hawks?
I mean, they've made quite a substantial investment already in Seth Jones. I would like to see whether or not he's at age 29. Is he going to be a key part of what they're trying to? Because he kind of bridges both. He bridged their last attempt to try to push forward as a team, contending before everything kind of fell apart. He had 31 points, I think, last season on defense. Obviously, you'd like to get a bit more based off of his contract. If Jones can kind of shoulder a bit more of that and kind of be, as he's learned a little bit, some of those experiences, hopefully helping him and a relatively young Chicago Blackhawks blue line, because I think that can go a long way. If we're talking about learning defense, you also have to have trust in the blue line that's behind you as well. Right. To get that all to go to kind of work together, then the Blackhawks can kind of, I think, then move. We can start talking about them moving along to the next stage of what they're trying to do.
Well, I mean, they extended Alex Vlasic long term, but
yep.
And I think Korchinski is going to be a good player, but he's a few years away from that. He's very young. But really, they added Alec Martinez and TJ Brody. I can say, watching TJ Brody,
this is very much I think those two guys are there pretty much as near coach to teach, as much to teach as they are to be competitive. It's interesting that Martinez, who had obviously had been on cut, obviously starting off with LA and then going to Vegas and kind of being a pretty important part, I think, of Vegas's blue line.
Yeah. And
now we're getting to that point of his career where now he's,
I'll give you one thing, though. The best story still on the Blackhawks is Philip Kurashev, because when he came over, he was at the Combine. I remember interviewing him in his draft year. He was living with Igor Larionov, his agent. Mm-hmm. Really, there was limited interest in him. He ended up getting drafted in the 4th round. This year, he had 54 points. That's pretty good.
Right. Colorado Avalanche, my big question is, how much is Mikko Rantanen going to get paid? Because I cannot imagine they're going to let him get close to free agency. He's got 1 year left at $9.25 million. My question is, will he get paid more or just as much as Nathan MacKinnon? I don't think he'll get as much. If he gets to the 12s, he should be happy. But I mean, that's my big question. They're going to have to pay him. I don't think they can let. I think they need to
top heavy. They're getting into top heavy territory.
They are. But
territory, at least when you win a cup.
They need to sign him before the start of the season, because once the season starts, then it's going to be like that slow roll towards free agency, and who knows whether. But that's my big question. Anthony, yours for Colorado.
Colorado's they're an interesting team. Kind of want to see, they kind of made moves at the deadline last year. They picked up Sean Walker at the deadline. I kind of want to see where their defense is going to be at this year. I know that sounds like an easy thing to say there, but I do feel like an unsung part of that Colorado Stanley Cup run was how, the play they got out of their blue line, especially playing against Tampa in the Stanley Cup final. And obviously certain things have changed. How is Girard in terms of his how is he physically? Because that can go a long way to kind of stretch out the rest of the blue line if he's in good health.
Russ?
When are people going to pipe down about Alexander Georgiev?
I knew you were going to.
Well, because think about it. Like, it may not be your prototypical great numbers that you like to see on the back of a hockey card, but how many games did he play last year? He played
when the first 30 games, when he played 29 of 30, that was a little ridiculous.
Yeah, he played 63 games and won 38. So we'll start there. He was 11-6 in the playoffs. Yeah, his goals against save percentage was an 8.97, but he was 11-6. He's 20. Well, he's played in 20 playoff games right now. He's won 9 of them. Like, it's not all on him. And their defense is good, but it's not great. And I think he's their goalie, and I don't think they're going to look any further. But yet, things will always be written about him, and I think he's fine.
Mm-hmm. For the Dallas Stars, my big question is, when are they going to give – now, they've given a lot of their youngsters opportunities probably sooner than I thought, like Stankoven, Jason Roberts.
Starting to get a chance.
Right, that's my question. I was going to say like Wyatt Johnston. But when are they going to give Maverick Bourque a chance? When are they going to give guys like Nils Lundqvist a chance? I mean, they went out in free agency, Russ, and they signed Matt Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin. And I don't think their defense is as good as it was when they had Tanev and when the big Finn who was injured that the Leafs tried to sign, and I can't think of his name right now. But what I'm talking about, the 6'7" Finnish defenseman.
Yanni Hakanpää.
Hakanpää, right. When Hakanpää was healthy. I think their defense was really good at that point. Now I think, now you've got Brendan Smith. I think you need to give some of these young guys a chance, and I'm just wondering whether they will this year.
The only thing I'll do is, before I ask the question, I'll answer you with at least Bourque got a playoff game in. He is 5'10", so I think they're going to still kind of ease him in. But I think his time has come. I think he'll get a longer look this year to start. And they got Liam Bishop coming in like 2 years, and he is a real piece of business. Right. So that's somebody that will long replace Hakanpää when he finally gets there. My question for them is going to be, can they get over the hump? Can they get over the hump while there's still some life in Tyler Seguin and the rest of that team? Like, the older part of the core.
The older part of the core. But I think they have enough underneath them that –
They do. But it's a combination of everything, because Jamie Benn's inspirational and he does a lot of dirty work. And so, every year can't be their year.
Do your dirty work.
Yeah. But you know what they're turning into? They're turning into the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, to a point. I don't know if I'm there. Well, yeah, when they were like knocking on the door.
When they were in the cup and didn't win, and then knocking on the door.
Pavelski's not there now, so maybe.
But I think they turned into the Sharks, and
That's terrible. I apologize.
This has to be the year. This has
they got to push through.
Get back to the cup.
They've drafted really, really, really well.
They've drafted and developed well.
Are making the Wyatt Johnsons, the Robertsons. They're making tremendous contributions.
No, Pavelski's going to hurt them, though. That's going to hurt.
Pavelski will, but you hope is that some of the younger players that are on the team are ready to have learned something from him and can, begin to move into that portion of their career where they can.
Ottinger was great in the playoffs. It's not on him.
He's great, but he also has his moments too, and that to me is something that is going to be important for them. I think that Ottinger is able to stay on top of it when things are maybe not quite as good as good. Again, to me, that's probably the biggest question in my mind is, again, getting them over the hump, but specifically Ottinger staying consistent. Especially when they get into the postseason and not being up, there's times when he's just up and down in the playoffs, and in some ways he's kind of like the Americanized version of Sergei Bobrovsky in this case. We're all going to be sort of questioning, he'll have great gaudy numbers in the regular season. Consistency when the heat picks up is going to be important too.
And he's young. Ottinger's got a lot of time. He's 25.
Exactly, he's got a lot of time, which is again, since Dallas is already knocking on the door here.
Right.
You would think he's old. You would think he's older than he actually is, Russ. Because I remember that 2018 World Junior, that him and Joseph Wall playing for Team USA at that big outdoor game at the stadium here in Buffalo. So it's
I remember that year watching him play. Like I was at a Bruins game. I was kind of touring around with Shea Malloy, and I'm watching BU play on my phone. And watching Ottinger, in his draft year. And, but they've got to come over. They've got to get over the hump.
Yeah. Now, the Minnesota Wild, I would say along the same lines, when is Jesper Wallstedt going to get an opportunity? Because I think he's ready, but he's being sort of blocked by Marc-Andre Fleury still can play, but, he's, 41 years old. But Gustafson's got 2 years on his contract. My question is, can Bill Guerin contain himself? Because this is the last year of the $14 million dead money that they have with the Parise and Suter buyouts. And then next year it drops to like $1 million total, like 1.6 million total. He's already started spending that money with the Brock Faber deal, Anthony. So he's already gone hog wild. But, I have a feeling that the next summer you're going to see a Kaprizov extension, whether he can control himself and not go spending willy-nilly. That's my question.
Yeah, it's a legit question. You look at that team, and it's just there's some fascinating parts on this team. Like, obviously Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi, Bold. You go through the line, you go, this team should be better than they've been. They are not the sum of their parts. They're playing kind of under what you think that team should be capable of. And again, they've had long stretches of time where they haven't had their leader, Jared Spurgeon. That's something that I hate to say it, as good as they are, with not having him in there, it kind of hurts at times. Now, again, I think Brock Faber, obviously, making just a quantum leap last season into their under their top pairing, maybe lessens that, but still, if you're looking at the rest of their blue line, it's kind of like,
I don't love their blue line.
It's Middleton, Chisholm, Bogosian is your body. So you're basically running three really good defensemen out there, and Brodin, Faber, and Spurgeon. And when you get in after that, Middleton's more of a tough.
I like Middleton. He's
I think, but I feel like he would be probably best in a third pairing situation, rather than having him rather than the second pair.
Well, here's a fun thing.
Yeah.
Guess the age of Zach Bogosian, because if I would have guessed, I'd have been wrong.
37.
Nope.
No, he's younger than that, I think.
He's younger than that.
33?
34, which is crazy.
How old?
34.
30. I was about that was exactly going to be my number.
I would never have guessed that.
Well, that's right, because he was the same draft as Pietrangelo Shen.
The reason why I think what makes us think that is because he's sort of hung around as the third pairing defenseman, and he plays a game that's kind of old fashioned.
Yeah,
from a different era, and you almost think that he is older than he actually is.
Yeah,
he just plays such a heavy game.
He does.
That's and that's
okay on the third pairing, but they're missing like two defensemen.
We're missing two guys. Yeah.
My question would be:
you're missing. Here's the thing: you're missing one guy that would allow them to kind of move, let's say, a Middleton to a third pairing.
Yeah.
At least one additional defenseman.
And they're going to be missing Dumba. Is my point? They're going to miss Dumba.
Yeah, and that's something that's going to be a part of it here that they're going to consider. And then
if
the goalie situation is going to be again, you got Gustafsson and Fleury. When is Walt? With their wall status at this point, as Mike said.
If they could add a middle pairing defenseman, it would allow everybody to move down one slot, and then their defense would be good. But they're sort of like in the same situation like Toronto has been for years, where okay, great, Morgan Riley's a great number 2, but the problem is he's your number 1. You need that player. I think Faber is a top pairing defenseman, but Spurgeon has been hurt so many times the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We'll see. But okay, my question for the Nashville Predators, and I say this a little bit tongue in cheek, but based on all the moves that they made this summer, can the Nashville Predators win the Stanley Cup? Because these moves, the clock is ticking on Stamkos. He's 34. Marchessault. Brady Shea is relatively young, but Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, all these guys are in their 30s.
It's a now team. It's a very much a team. It's a now team. Those are now moves. These are guys you're bringing in to augment what you think is a strong line is a strong top to bottom lineup. But it's a long season too.
Sure.
How. Steven Stamkos is Steven Stamkos. That being said, when you take a player who had been on one roster for a long time, you build certain tendencies and expectations, and there is some work that you have to do in order to graft yourself on to a new lineup in the circumstance for Nashville. The blue line's good. I think that the Shea contract was a mass overpayment. Yes. Does that mean I think Shea's not a good defenseman? No. It just means that they just decided to pay a high market rate for a defenseman I think is maybe a number 3,
right?
In this circumstance, whereas they feel like they paid almost number 2 money. So that the goaltending situation, that's something that they've got to figure out. I mean, it's Saros, but now you signed Wedgwood, and you've got you've got a young goaltender at in Milwaukee who's rattling the Sabres unhappily that that he's not going to have an opportunity necessary to play in the NHL next year, and that would be a shame to lose that asset as an option. But they feel, I guess,
they have time on that one. They don't have to.
They do have time. They do, and the player might get angry, and then maybe it's a case where, okay, what are you going to do if you want to go to the KHL? All right, it would be. We would obviously criticize the asset management, but I would turn around and say, well, what they could have had him up. The question is, how many games is he going to get in battery with Saros?
Well, I think he would be happy if he got 30 games. I do. And
is he going to get that though?
No,
he's going to be in Milwaukee. They signed.
No, we understand that, Mike. We're talking theoretically here. Theoretically, you can give him 30 games and let Saros do the rest, because Saros isn't the youngest guy anymore either. So, but they probably won't do that, like Mike said. My big question is, last year they scored 2 goals a game. Exactly. They were 3rd worst in the league. Is Stamkos going to make them and score 3 goals a game? No. So where's the rest of the scoring going to come from? Because Stamkos will, he'll make it 2.3, but even 2.4, which is the Islanders, was like 6th worst in the league. How much more can they rise on that list? Because if they don't get to the middle, they're not.
Marchessault will help a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I don't think they really. Now, will they play Stamkos at center? Because remember, Stamkos played the wing a lot in Tampa. I would think they would have to play Stamkos at center as a 1-2, combo with O'Reilly.
I would think. They're going to play. If you sign Steven Stamkos, obviously in this circumstance, he's going to want to play a preferred position until he plays himself out of that position. Sure. That's at a certain point. Then you might have to go to him and say, if his center play is not working,
Right.
It's going to stink for Nashville because of the amount of investment that they made. Because the investment that they made is for a 1C, basically.
My question for the St. Louis Blues is, can you make the playoffs shopping at the dollar store? Because I'll just read off the names here quickly. They got Radek Fox as a salary dump from Dallas. Mm-hmm. Matthew Joseph, salary dump from Ottawa. Mm-hmm. Alexander Texier, he was not a salary dump, but he was dumped by Columbus. Let's see here. We have P.O. Joseph. So we have the Joseph brothers, a dump from Pittsburgh, I believe. So that's 5 players. Now, they have some good players. We know they have, Kyrou and Thomas and Braden Shen, and they signed Buchnevich to the long-term extension. Mm-hmm. I just don't know whether all these moves add up to.
They seem like they're in the middle. They're a borderline team that might make the postseason, but it's just an equal chance of them not making the postseason.
And if Torrey
Binnington's going to be a big part of that, their blue line play has to be better.
Ryan Suter is the other one. Sorry, Ryan Suter is the other one up the
Suter signing with them, but again, St. Louis feels like a team that's just in limbo. They feel like they're a limbo team. They're somewhere in between. I almost feel like they're waiting on some of the younger players to really take a bigger, even, or some of the guys they might have in system to make their way up. They're just they're still in what I would call almost the post, even though how many years is, it's been what, 29, when was the Cup, 2019?
2019.
Yes, yeah. 2019. We're 5 years removed from that, and there's almost this feeling with St. Louis that everything went into that. And they've just been short ever.
You mean it's been 5 years since I had toasted ravioli? Damn.
It's been 5 years, yes. Well, you could that's something you can easily remedy yourself.
I know. I haven't thought about it.
Deep fried ravioli. Yeah, that'd be
It's the most Midwestern thing ever.
It's really good. I'll say this. My question is, are the Blues going to have to play a too heavier game, or are they just too old? And
that's my concern, is that some of the key parts on the team are getting up there in years, and they're going to lose Krug for a while. That being said, they're going to be able to use that space to do something potential, but maybe they won't. Maybe they just look at it.
Yeah, I don't think they have it. I don't think, like you said,
there's anything out there too that they can do that really can kind of be a difference maker for them, other than what they have within.
Yeah, Thomas probably has one more level to go, maybe, and Kyrou can get a little better, but you're milking a stone at this point. You know what they are. It's tough.
I've never tried to milk a stone, Russ.
Try it.
Never mind. For the Utah Hockey Club, which is still tough to say, but it's much better than saying Arizona.
Utah.
Yeah, it's much better than saying Arizona Coyotes. My question is, can Logan Cooley become a superstar at age 20? And last year, he played all 82 games, scored 44 points, 20 goals. Mm-hmm. No doubt he's a talent. I think now they've sort of built a team. They filled in a lot of gaps. I don't think they're a playoff team. I still think they're short of that. But
competitive. It's a competitive lineup, right. and it's something we're just not used to for that particular franchise in their days, and being the league's clearinghouse for contracts.
Right, but 60 points at Minnesota, and then he scores 44 in the NHL. Russ, I mean, I don't think it's out of the question that he becomes a superstar next year.
No, but I hate to use the word superstar because there's only like so few in the league. I think he'll be an
echelon of top line centers. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah, I think so. I think he'll be an all-star next year. My question is, what is the Utah Hockey Club? I don't know. I don't know what they are.
I think they made moves to make themselves. And again, it's the first year they kind of almost had to. Just to basically make a statement that this is a fresh start, and this is a new, not an expansion team, but a team that is going to try to bring as many fans in the Salt Lake City and the Utah, together with them. That's going to be the part to me that's going to be most fascinating.
Their defense, it has a lot of puck moving guys, but not a lot of hard defensive guys. You know, it's got Durzi, Valimaki, Sergachev, Marino. They're all puck moving guys.
Sergachev, yeah.
I
likes to hit sometimes.
Yes, I don't like the Durzi contract. I mean that he does not play defense. He is not good in his own zone. That is the reason why he was traded as a prospect with Toronto. In LA, I think pretty much.
Just put up a good comment. Can Barrett Hayton stay healthy?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what Barrett Hayton really is.
We don't. Yeah, we're just classic guy was taken high in the draft.
Played too soon.
I think Beckett Seneca has more of a chance of becoming of being as surprised as we were at him getting taken third overall. I think we equally had our jaws hitting the floor when Barrett Hayton got taken.
Absolutely.
And but the difference here is Anaheim won't. Well, knock on wood, Anaheim will not be stupid enough to put Seneca into the NHL at age 18, which is what Arizona did with Hayton. So
the big question for me and this team really is, did they bring up Dylan Guenther too soon? Because I think they still may have. He's only 21 this year. He's got a heck of a shot, but he never really had an all-around game, not a great all-around game. So he's kind of learning it at the NHL level. You know, he had 35 points in the NHL, which is good. But, he's the kind of guy where, you drafted him 9th overall. He had 18 goals. He needs to be a 30-goal scorer. Can he be a 30-goal scorer? Maybe.
Randy just asked a real good question. Hey, Russ, how many years until is an NHL? Yeah. 2 years?
2 years for T.J. Ginla, yeah.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right. 2 years.
Yeah, I have one question and one statement. The one question is, when will Utah make the trade for Mitch Marner?
They're not.
I know.
Mitch Marner's staying, Mike. Mike, go back and listen to Russ from 3 months ago, and he told you Mitch Marner is staying.
I try not
to he's staying.
I tried not to listen to Russ. And the other one is, see this name? Do not name your hockey team after.
What they do just to annoy. What they do now that just to annoy you.
Yes, that is the leading.
I know. I actually like
you bring back a paw print, just like the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. I actually like the Utah Hockey Club, just like I like the Washington football team rather than the Commanders, which could be the stupidest.
I want to see the Yeti go at it with Gritty.
Dumber names and Commanders, Mike. Come on.
How about the Yeti and Gritty steel cage match? Like, we'd all watch that.
Yeah, and finally, I wish we had Pete Tessier here to ask. But the big question for the Winnipeg Jets, and I'll the low-hanging fruit here, I'll just say the big question is, what the hell would they get for Rutger McGroarty? I think they will get a second-round pick, but Russ thinks I'm high. So go ahead.
I do. I think, and I'll ask the same question, and just because of time, because Anthony doesn't have much time. I'm with Mike as far as what will they get. Mike, I think it's a third-round pick because this is a situation where they had a chance to burn a year of his ELC, and they didn't do it. Do I know 100% that that's the reason?
Keep the situation quiet, unlike the Flyers did.
Correct. And you can't.
Omerta equals second-round pick. You talk it's third or less.
Correct. And that's the truth.
Okay.
That's the truth.
All right. There you go. We'll do the Pacific Division on Friday. For Anthony Mangione, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.